So the David trial is continuing on. We just had a court date yesterday and we are waiting for the next date. But behind the scenes, there's some very interesting things going on. Now, there's been quite a lot of interesting speculation over the months, and a lot of things have been swept under the rug and forgotten. But your boy, Trapmore Ross, does not forget. Now, who remembers when TMZ were putting it all out there that all these little details about the state of the body was going around? They was talking about the body was partially frozen for a bit. They were talking about dismembered. Then they said it wasn't dismembered. Then a bunch of people were saying, oh, the dismemberment, there's no proof of that. It's just people lying. Where's the proof? Where's the proof? When's the LAPD going to admit that it was a dismemberment? And then lo and behold, it turned out it was a dismemberment. Now, this is all about justice for Celeste. So rest in peace, Celeste. Let's not lose sight of the fact that all these arguments are irrelevant at the end of the day, because all that matters is that this little girl who was violated and taken away from her life way too soon deserves justice, and that she gets justice. That's all that we're waiting for. But a lot of things have gone wrong in this case, and a lot of things have been handled very wrong, very disrespectfully. And now it seems to be the case that some of those things that went wrong are finally going to be set straight. And more specifically, I'm talking about how the medical examiner handled things. And they're apparently now launching an internal probe at the LA County Medical Examiner's office due to some of the information that was leaked. And I believe they're actually now probing into the possibility that some people, or so people involved in the medical examiners or people that had access to the medical examiners portals actually very improperly accessed that information and disseminated it to the media. And I'm looking at you, TMZ, with your suspicious sources, with a bunch of stuff that you knew before everyone else, and then a bunch of other nonsense that you put out there that also turned out to be untrue. Now, at the end of the day, I just want to follow this story and get justice for Celeste. Sometimes people get things wrong. As long as you correct the record, okay, I do think that it is important to circulate information for the safety of the community. A lot of people are suggesting in this story that, oh, you shouldn't even be allowed to talk about this case until the case is over. Absolutely not. We need to protect the community. We need to warn the community that there are predators in the community preying on children. Not just David. I did a video about predators lurking on Fortnite that went over a lot of people's heads. But David is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to creeps online, not just celebrities, that will actually happily worm their way into your children's lives. So I do think it's important to spread this information and to talk about this even while we fight and chase justice. But that doesn't mean that people should be snooping into children's autopsies to, disseminate information improperly when the legal system is still going on. So this is an article that's going around. It says workers at the LA Medical Examiner's office are now under investigation after leaks in the David case. Employees are being interviewed about allegedly viewing the medical examiner's investigation files without permission following media reports that included grisly details from Celeste Rivas Hernandez's case. And there's a lot of people that are going to have their feet held to the fire in this. It says more than a dozen employees at the LA County Department of the Medical Examiner, including investigators and office staff, have been ordered to answer questions about whether they viewed law enforcement investigation files without specific authorization after some media reports included graphic details on the death of Celeste Rivas Hernandez. Rest in peace. The teenager allegedly killed by the pop singer known as David before the autopsy file was officially made public. It says the Rivas case itself may have led to the inquiry by the LA County Department of Human Resources. Someone's getting fired, or some people. There could be multiple people getting fired. They began notifying employees in recent days that they were in big trouble, days and weeks, that they were required to appear for recorded interviews. Several sources familiar with the probe told NBC4 investigates. Now, I wonder if the public are going to find out who's responsible for these leaks. Are people going to get fired? Are there going to be criminal charges? This sounds against the law. And are these interviews and depositions eventually going to be made public through some sort of freedom of information request? I don't know. Possibly. So the Department of Medical Examiner, commonly known as the coroner, said Monday that it doesn't comment on pending investigations, which is interesting, right? Because you don't comment, but there's a lot of information circulating before it was supposed to. So I wonder if you don't comment, but you might have a few workers that look a few things up when they're not supposed to. So it says the discovery of Rivas's remains last September inside a Tesla that was abandoned and registered to David drew intense public attention, leading the LAPD's robbery homicide detectives to request the medical examiner's records be withheld from public view until the investigation was complete. Now, I think this was wrong. I do think this was wrong. We still haven't had an explanation from the LAPD's robbery homicide division as to why that was. Now, a lot of speculation, and myself included, kind of came to the conclusion that perhaps because they didn't have enough to arrest David, which is absurd to me because they searched the property pretty soon after and found blood. But I think the working theory that was going around was that, okay, they don't want some of the gruesome details about the body to come out to spook David into maybe fleeing the country before they were ready to arrest him, because I think they wanted to maybe muddy the waters and make David himself think, oh, the body was probably too unrecognizable for them to pin it on me and I'm scot-free. He snitched on himself allegedly. He had wiretapped recordings. We've still not been privy to these wiretap recordings, but I believe they're coming. And I think by the end of the month, we might begin to know what's on those wiretap recordings. We might begin to know the conversations that David was having before he was arrested. We might begin to know what was said in that grand jury and what his friends, family, management, people, colleagues were saying about him to the grand jury and beyond. So I think that's going to come out, and I do get it. If that's what they were doing, I get it. But I'd like to see some transparency, because at the end of the day, at this point, David's been arrested. I think the cops could tell us now why they didn't put that out there. This was apparently unusual. Normally, when people are murdered, they get the results of the medical examiner's report and they put it out there. The detectives made a very specific request, and this came under scrutiny. So it said the medical examiner initially denied the LAPD's request, so they didn't want to keep this secret. They said they didn't have the jurisdiction. It was insufficient to withhold the case information from the public, but then the LAPD clapped back. They got a court order in November to put the case file under lockdown. Now, here's the thing. That sucks, and that's perhaps wrong morally, right, as far as, the righteousness of the public deserves to know how this little girl in the community died. Until we can actually take the scumbag off the streets and put them away for life who did it, at the very least we should let people know that, this what killed this girl, and do we need to be worried about our own children? I don't have kids. I don't know if I want kids, but people that do have kids that are 14, 15 playing Fortnite, little girls, they deserve to know what is ending the lives of other little girls in the community as we await for justice. I think that makes sense. The LAPD said no. They got a court order and they put the case file under lockdown. Okay, fine. But then this is where it's wrong. Even if you don't believe that, you can't take the law into your own hands. You can't snoop around and access the files when you're not supposed to. So it says the union that represents investigators at the medical examiner, the LA County Professional Peace Officers Association, the PPOA, said it couldn't comment on ongoing personnel investigations, but verified some employees had received notifications from the county about the inquiry. It said, we expect the county to conduct any investigation professionally, fairly, and without prejudice. The PPOA emailed on Monday. It said, we encourage others to allow the process to run its course before making conclusions. It said the SEIU 721, the union that represents the other members of the medical examiner's administrative staff, said it couldn't comment on the nature of inquiry. Now nobody wants to comment. You had your tongue held for a while and you wanted to comment. They finally let you comment. Now you can't comment because you're all under investigation. It's very bad. It says, we can say unequivocally that our union remains firmly committed to safeguarding the privacy of all victims. Patient privacy is an issue we take seriously, especially since so many of our union members are in the healthcare field and work with patients either directly or indirectly, it said in a statement. This is why this is a really messed up situation, because some people probably morally disagreed with what the LAPD were doing to keep this information under wraps, but if that's what a judge decided, that's what it's got to be. And if people went around that and got the information and somehow it made its hands into TMZ, it's like you can be right and wrong at the same time. And that's not TMZ to distribute that information. And, there could be even more reasons that we can't even comprehend why they might have wanted to keep this secret. David A. Burke was arrested in April on suspicion of the murder of Rivas Hernandez, possibly in April 2025 at his rental home in Hollywood Hills, according to court documents. He was charged with murder with the special circumstance allegations of lying in wait, murder for financial gain, and murdering a witness. Prosecutors also allege he personally used a sharp instrument to carry out the killing. He's pled not guilty, and his attorney said they'll vigorously defend his innocence. All right, let's see how that works out. The LA County Department of Human Resources didn't immediately respond to a request for comment, though one official said the county's personnel investigations are generally kept confidential until they're concluded. So I think this is very, very interesting. Honestly, I'm very curious to know how people are reacting to this, because it's kind of like, it's a weird one, because it's like a lot of people didn't agree with this being kept a secret, but then you can't really say that it's okay that people can snoop around and get that information beyond what the law allows, even if you disagree. You can't break laws you disagree with, right? So it says they're only doing this because the medical examiner ratted on the LAPD to the public. The LAPD need to be the ones investigated by an outside party. Now, that's taking things to a slight extreme. I would say I think the LAPD need to at least give some reasoning, some more specific reasoning. Like, what were you doing? Were you genuinely worried that he was going to flee to somewhere like Dubai? Or, I don't know, Qatar, Algeria. I don't know where don't have the extradition treaties these days. Bali. It's possible. People saying the only person that needs to be investigated is the child predator named David Anthony Burke. Allegedly. Get your facts straight. Allegedly. For facts. Allegedly facts. 100%, because if evidence is compromised, it can be inadmissible in court, and depending on what that evidence is, it can make or break a case. That is the good point. And this, I'm going to show you a post in a minute, but this is unfortunately going to become fodder for the defense. If the defense is now saying, well, the medical examiner's office is under investigation, can we really believe anything they say? They're snooping around, getting into the file, selling it to TMZ. They're not even in it for the right reasons. Can we even trust any of them? I don't think we can trust anyone that's worked on this case because they're under investigation. This is going to play into David's hands, unfortunately, and that's actually really bad news for those chasing justice. So this is kind of, some more reporting that the workers are being probed, after this, all right? So this is the article. It's probably going to have pretty much everything that we just read in the other article. So, excuse me, I've have a weird thing going on at the moment is, like, I keep yawning a lot when I'm making these videos, and, like, I'm not really even tired. I've been pausing when I yawn, because some people said it was annoying, but I genuinely, I think when I'm making these videos, I'm talking too fast. I'm not getting enough oxygen. I've been trying to look up how to stop yawn, because it's actually, like, it's getting to the point where I'm doing it all the time. I'm gasping for air. Anyway, it's irrelevant to this. So it says, basically, yeah, this kind of is basically the same information. Information was circulated. Graphic details, before the autopsy was made public. They got their court order. They put the case under lockdown. This is all the same information, so we don't need to go through that again. But what I want to do here is, get the information that people are saying in the comments. It says, if they were the sources for the TMZ articles, how the fuck did they manage to get every bit of info wrong? Like the person who said Celeste was still partially frozen in the Tesla. Then Harvey said we went back to them and they've doubled down, tripled down, and quadrupled down. Celeste was still partially frozen inside that Tesla. I can almost guarantee that HR were in cahoots with the detectives and leaking information to employees that were suspected of being the sources of these obvious lies. So when TMZ said Celeste was still partially frozen, HR knew who the source was and fired them during this investigation. If that is true, that is diabolical, but in a kind of good way. And that would be such a saving grace for handing the defense, the ability to invalidate the autopsy medical report. If they actually had fake information and they were setting up people that they suspected were leakers with fake info about the freezing, I think that would be absolutely crazy. It says very possible and smart. Could have been a sting operation. It's a great catch, especially since we know TMZ is so close with Blair Burke. I love this theory. Great catch. It would make a lot of sense and explain so much. I suspect they gave TMZ some incorrect information mixed in with accurate details, so it wouldn't seem suspicious that the source was someone from the medical examiner's office. It could have definitely been a trap, or Harvey got the info from David's team and it was fake info regardless. It says, yes, a canary trap. The government loves using that to see who's leaking confidential information. I wouldn't put it past law enforcement to do the same, especially with the state of policing in LA, which has a long history of gangs existing within law enforcement, also known as the canary in a coal mine trap. I think the information the media reported was false, though, except that she was dismembered, which the LAPD confirmed. It says these folks must have been the sources that TMZ had early on. Says TMZ usually uses law enforcement sources. They always have crooked cops in LA willing to give confidential information for a check. I need some of these crooked cops in LA willing to give me confidential and false information for a check, maybe. I am joking. It says in this case, it might have been somebody from the medical examiner's office. It says, but they were wrong. It was fake info. So they were wrong when they reported that she was dismembered. It says they were wrong when they reported she was frozen inside the Tesla that's been sitting out in LA sun for months, and wrong again when they doubled down, tripled down, or quadrupled down on the same wrong info. Try to bend the narrative somewhere else. I apologize for the name calling, not the emotion behind it. But they were right about her being dismembered. No one's bending the narrative. Name calling. Yeah, we're not gonna devolve into these petty arguments. It says, so if they leaked it, what does it mean for the case? I'm going to show you another post in a minute that's relevant. So it's super weird that the defense first had issues that it was a sealed document in the first place and criticized the prosecution to release it at the earliest, and now they're trying to nitpick and say it wasn't sealed more securely. This is just a disgusting attempt by the defense to deflect from the brutal crime committed by their client, allegedly, and to focus on the methods of investigation. This is a good point, and I think this commenter might have made a whole bunch of posts that I'm about to reference. This nitpicking is the whole reason law enforcement took months to arrest David and tried to make sure all the documentation and procedure was on point, which they got criticized for, by the way, and now they'll get criticized for not taking longer. All this while it's just a rich psychopath getting away with murder. Justice for Celeste. I rate this comment. It says the defense is not supposed to make life easy for the prosecution. Defense attorneys have an ethical responsibility to vigorously defend their clients. Wherever they can, they will try to find fault with methods, and I've been saying that for the longest time because that's how criminal defense works. If the process is flawed, then you can't have faith in the evidence. Putting people away when the evidence is flawed or the process to analyze it is flawed isn't the system that we want, not if we're rational. Okay, it's an interesting angle. I think David does deserve a quality defense. Well, he deserves a defense, don't know about how quality it is. But at the same time, if they're doing these diabolical tactics, it does make me think maybe it's not so good. So this is just another article in the Celeste subreddit, but people are saying they're only doing this because the medical examiner ratted on the LAPD to the public. I think I already read this one, actually, my bad. Yeah, so this is the post that I think maybe that last comment I might have had. Is this basically the same thing that I saw in the comment? So yeah, this commenter has actually put that same comment up as posts on various subreddits. Now, I do really agree with this. I just want to reiterate. I think it's very, very interesting. Yes, at first, the defense says it was wrong. It was a sealed document. All right. They criticized the prosecution trying to release it sooner. And now they're saying, why wasn't it sealed more securely? And next thing they're going to be saying is, oh, the medical examiner's office is corrupt. They're investigating themselves now. How can we even trust that investigation? Maybe they need more external investigation. It's tough. Okay. And unless it was a sting operation, this really might come back to bite the prosecution in the ass. People saying, welcome to trials, that's how it works. Wait until the defense file a flurry of motions in Lamine, Dober hearings and endless continuances. This is going to take years to go to trial. Just sad and disappointing no matter how many people stay active on Reddit or how many British people go to LA just to take notes on their notebook. The rich psychopaths will always get away with the abuse and murders of minors. What did I have to do with this? Don't even worry about me. Let's worry about the Justice for Celeste. Like, I'm just there taking notes, minding my own business, guys. Like, I'm confused. I'm actually quite confused why how many British people. I didn't hear any other British accents when I was there. I think I was the only one. So that is weird. To take no matter how many, it's like what? And I don't think he's going to get away with it. I don't think he's getting away with this, all right? Giving up before the trial is not the attitude needed for getting justice. You're right. I really hope foolish attempts like these don't interfere. Thank you. All right? I was rocking with Zara of Shake, but now I'm thinking like, what you got against me anyway? That's how these trials will go. They'll attempt to slide anything deemed as inconsistent so they can use it as a defense or a request to gain other privileges from the judge and court later. It's like, okay, you're making a cup of tea. I'll sauce you with the water, but I request the sugar, tea bag, milk and cup in return for my minuscule input. It's like a stalling tactic. The more people that fingers can be pointed at gives David's team more time. Says, well, it can interrupt and sway the jury, leaking info that they might not be able to use. Maybe they secretly wanted to do that so they can claim a mistrial. Said, or maybe Blair thought that it was an easy case. They don't have damning evidence against him like the majority of us thought that too with the whole silence. So this that comment has been made as a post around a bunch of places, all right? So this is some more interesting analysis. It says they're just throwing a Hail Mary, hoping they can use this to discredit all the forensic evidence. That's what I think they're going to try and do. And the way the whole investigation was managed, it's grimy, but it won't work and get him off. It's true, it'll get someone fired for sure, but there's too much evidence here for this single thing to derail the whole case against him. Add to that it isn't even confirmed yet that there's an ongoing investigation into many of the employees at that office, but no formal charges as yet. ETA in a criminal trial in an internal ETA, in a criminal trial, an internal administrative leak or breach of protocol by office staff is considered a separate issue from the actual evidence linking a suspect to a crime in the court size. It's not a legal defect that invalidates the actual evidence. Thank God. Hope that's true. The defense's whole shtick at this point is to invalidate and get as much evidence thrown out as possible. They're going to do what they got to do, I guess. The defense is not supposed to make life easy for the prosecution. I believe we did already read that comment. So, right, I'm kind of confused because most of that info that was leaked was wrong. Like the part about her being frozen and decapitated was all wrong. So what was really leaked? Her cause of death was never leaked. They said, and the info was leaked by TMZ, not the medical examiner. This is a lame attempt to deflect. I hope it doesn't work. Like, imagine I make a video with false information and say the LA County medical examiner told me. Doesn't mean they did. Right? Harvey Levin's source was just playing in his face, telling fake stories. I wonder how much TMZ paid them for that BS. It said it was brought up by Blair Burke that TMZ, Blair's best friends, knew incorrect information about the autopsy, which I complained isn't publicly released. Please look into the medical examiner that's been working hard to seek justice for the child my client abused and murder. That's pretty crazy. I thought the autopsy is publicly released. It was sealed because the LAPD wanted to protect the integrity of the investigation, even though the medical examiner wanted to make it public. Glad it was sealed because they were able to lock in testimonies at the grand jury hearings because of it. And then David got arrested. Blair screamed, why is the autopsy not public? And got an order to make it public. And they're now saying, why wasn't it sealed more securely? My friends at TMZ got incorrect information and posted it on their YouTube channel already. If it was so secure, they only got it wrong info. They only got wrong info. So what if the medical examiner was trolling TMZ? So if you look back at Harvey's videos, he looks extremely uncomfortable in every single one of them. He knows he's doing something wrong to help the defense. The one where he's literally on the beach, like, I swear 10 toes down, she was frozen. So unserious. I remember when they literally said she was found still frozen in a hot trunk that's been sitting for months, and Matt Tabido or whatever tried to cover for them, like the bodies are frozen in the morgue, and they actually refrigerate bodies in the morgue, not freeze, lol. The claims were insanely outlandish and obviously wrong, and they peddled it anyway for views. It says exactly, make it make sense. Also, the grass, the pitch, and the audacity of this B to literally get an investigation started into the medical examiner and ask for bail for her murderous child abuser of a client. Blair having a rough one in these comments, all right? At least it's not just me. For real, I love what lawyers do for us in theories, but defending someone like this has to make them feel bad about themselves because what? I bet the check makes it easier, all right? Some of that stuff could have been planted to find leaks potentially. That kind of stuff happens a lot with big companies. If I tell 5 people that I suspect of leaking information to the press about something confidential, but I tell each of you something different and I hear the thing that I told you being repeated in the press, then guess who I'm coming for, lol. If that was the case, I feel like there wouldn't be a need for any further investigation. He looks so shifty in every related video. The frozen statement is how dumb they think people are. And to be fair, some people are still saying she was frozen. It's crazy. Sorry, but this is relatively normal when it comes to murder cases. The same thing's been going on for years in the case of Courtney Clenny. So that's everything about that. I didn't really have another video to bring this up in, so I just wanted to show you this at the end. We actually did see when Beth Silverman, the district attorney, was like, damn near 45 seconds late for court. Okay, I swear down. She was like, they were like, where is she? And then boom, she was there. But I guess the 45 seconds late, she was speaking to the press for like 32 seconds. All right. But she actually did reveal that apparently Celeste's family is doing well given the circumstances. And Beth Silverman, the DA, did actually comment. And this would seem to suggest that she is actually in touch with them and keeping them informed of what's going on, which I think is really just good to know.
Beth, how's the family holding up?
Doing as well as possible. Thanks for asking.
Well, what do you expect to happen in there today?
I don't know. We'll see.
What does justice look like, at this point? And there's a lot of stuff that's come out. It's been pretty shocking. What does justice look like for the family?
You know what's funny? I was stood next to that little doorway and I was seeing people getting turned away from it. Obviously, I know it's employees only, but I was just thinking they got this. I was thinking, no way, she ain't got to go through all the shit that I got to go through. They got airport style security in there, but nah, she got the secret back door. You know what I'm saying? That's the DA. She walking in there like the president with a whole team behind her, man. You got to respect them. They moving mad presidential. So shout out to them. But yeah, I do worry that this whole medical examiner thing could actually end up being a big point for David and his defense team. I just want to see justice for Celeste. I do feel like, based on all of the stuff that I've seen in my research, that just in my opinion, I think he did it. That's just my opinion. I think it seems like he did it. And I would hate for some random technicality like this to actually help out David's defense in a way that could even get anywhere close to him getting off on something as technical as this. It's, some corruption inside the medical examiner's office, ironically, because the LAPD were trying to keep something hush-hush. So I'll let you guys know about this. This could be bad news for the prosecution, but we'll see. Hopefully this doesn't work out. And I got to say, everyone does deserve a defense, but at the same time, it's like I'm not the judge, so I feel like I'm just a person reporting on this, and I've seen so much evidence that leads me to believe, in my personal opinion, it looks likely that he might have done this. But yeah, we're gonna have to just wait and see. And if this is a technicality that ends up helping him, Lord help us. All right, rest in peace, Celeste. That's all we want to see is justice for that poor little girl. And I'll leave it there. I'll let you guys know as soon as I've got some new information. But for now, I'm out of here. Peace.